Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me for another video. This is part 2 of my new mini series. I'm looking at players that ruined your fantasy season. And in this one, I have running backs for you. I'm going to go over my top or bottom 5, depending how you look on it. And then I'm also going to give you guys a bonus player at the end of it. Reminder, if you're not aware, this is looking at my personal pre-draft rankings where I have these guys, and then based on where they actually finished, these ones were some of the biggest disappointments in all of fantasy football. I'm gonna go over a quick rundown of basically why they let us down, why they could have ruined our fantasy seasons based on the circumstances that surrounded them. So to kick it off, we are starting with Jonathan Taylor. He was my and pretty much everyone else's pre-draft #1 overall player. He actually finished outside of the top 30, which was absolutely brutal. So many things went wrong in Indianapolis. Really, a lot of it was not JT's fault, but the worst part about drafting him is that he started off 2022 just like he ended 2021 by dominating. 175 total yards and a tutty in week 1. That left owners excited for the possibility of an encore season. However, that was not to be. Taylor would just have one game rushing for more than 100 yards for the rest of the year. He also had more sub-20 finishes with 7 of them than top 20 performances. He only put up 5 of those. And worst of all, he was down and out during your playoff stretch when he was needed most. What else went wrong? Well, the quarterback carousel did not help his prospects, and neither did the step back from basically the entirety of the Colts offensive line. So if you banked on another monster year from Taylor, as many of us did, you likely did not survive. The next running back who ruined your fantasy football season is DeAndre Swift. I had him inside of my top 10. He barely finished as an RB2. He was probably the most frustrating player overall to own in 2022, and I'm not even taking into account the 3 games that he missed to injury from weeks 4 to 7. Now, just like Jonathan Taylor, Swift exploded onto the scene. He had back-to-back top 5 finishes to start the year, getting owners very excited for the possibility of what was to come. Then it all unraveled. Swifty either never fully got healthy, or he just was not trusted anymore to stay off of IR by that coaching staff, so his touches were few and far between. In fact, he had more than 10 touches just 4 times after week 3. You wanted to play him, but you never knew if you should or if you could. And while you were tinkering with your lineup and thinking about replacements, guess what else was happening? Jamal Williams was busy leading the league in rushing touchdowns. Being a 2022 Swift manager was basically an owner's worst nightmare, and it severely hurt your playoff chances. The next running back we're looking at is Javonte Williams. I had him as a top 10 guy. He did not even finish in the top 75. Now, if you have beef with Williams being on this list because of the injury alone, I can't exactly fault you for your thought process on this. But the fact remains, I had him as a top 10 option coming into the year, and in fact, he did not get inside of the top 15 one time before tearing his ACL against Vegas. So it's not like he was hitting on all cylinders prior to going down with that injury. Now, Denver cycled through backs trying to replace him, and even though Latavius Murray found some success as he was signed fresh off of the street, the running game really never fully came together, even when Jay Will was in the backfield. If you drafted him, it was all kinds of bad. Cam Akers is the next running back who ruined your fantasy season. I had him in the top 15 of my pre-draft rankings. He barely finished as an RB3. He was maybe one of the most curious case for owners in 2022, and he almost avoided this list because of an epic finish. He had 6 straight finishes in RB2 land to end the season. The problem with that was by that time, it was probably probably too little, too late for owners who still had him on their rosters, and many people at that point had already dropped him. Akers started slower than any of us would have liked. He was almost traded early on, and then he returned to the team as a backup slash change of pace type of option before doing exactly what I thought he was going to do to start off the year. What he ended up doing in reality was eating a roster spot for far too long. He was inefficient and he was inconsistent in the opportunity department until way late, and he gave you only a little bit as a top 15 investment. That is not what we were looking for. After how he ended this year, he is likely going to be a breakout candidate going into 2023 again. My last two running backs on this list probably hurt me more than anybody else. The first one is going to be Breece Hall. I had him as a pre-draft number 17 running back. He finished just outside of the top 40, and he will forever leave owners thinking what could have been. Hall did just enough with the limited touches that he had early on to make him an awesome buy low candidate. I was one of the people really pushing for you guys to go and get him onto your rosters. A couple weeks in, he had done enough to show that potential that I thought he had, but he hadn't quite broken out yet. So going and getting him early really paid dividends. Just as I predicted, the explosion happened. Hall looked like a league winner for 2 weeks before he tore his ACL in week number 7 against Denver, and that ended up altering league landscapes and effectively ending the Jets' playoff chances in the process. We didn't know that at the time, but it certainly did. New York basically nosedived once he was out. There were many good waiver wire options at that point who were already off of the list, and losing what turned out to be a high-end RB2 at worst and a smash RB1 at best at the midseason point was a really crippling thing for our rosters. He was still able to finish as RB41 in the year. Considering when he went out, that is extremely impressive. But when you are 17th heading into the draft, that is not going to be enough to keep your manager afloat. The last guy was someone I've actually liked for multiple seasons. Hasn't quite worked out yet, and that is J.K. Dobbins. I was higher than consensus on him coming into the year. I had him as a pre-draft running back 18. He barely cracked the top 50 when all was said and done. He had pretty much a worst case scenario outcome for owners in 2022. He missed the first 2 weeks to start this season, so that was already about as bad as a start as you could possibly get. And then he cracked the top 45 just once in his first 4 games. Then another injury effectively took him off all rosters for 2 whole months. So you did get a few good games from him down the stretch if you added him towards the end of the season when I suggested, but the timeshare that he was in made it hard to plug him in with any confidence. Either way, it was not nearly enough to pay off the faith that drafters put in him to start the season. JK has also played just 23 games total in his first 3 seasons. That's something we have to consider for next year, and he once again hurt you way more than he helped you. And that's it, my list of running backs who killed your 2022 chances for fantasy football glory. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you keep your eye out because I have wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks in this same type of category. And then I also have my fantasy football MVPs that are going to be coming out in another week or 2. Drop a like on the video to keep us moving forward together, and please subscribe if you have not done so already. We are well on our way to our first 1,000 subscribers. You can be a part of that by clicking that button for me. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opath, and I will see you next time.